Now, he surprised us, the Governor of the Bank of England, last time, didn't he? Because we thought they'd go up 0.75%, they went up 0.5%. Where do you think it will be today?
It's a difficult call because the Bank of England doesn't have all of that fiscal information that Tom just talked about. That would be very helpful in determining interest rates. But I think with the markets now expecting this 75 basis point, 3/4 of a percentage point rise, if the bank doesn't do this, they're going to look like they flubbed it. They're going to look like they aren't telegraphing things very well. So I think the bank has sort of painted itself into a corner here. So I'd be surprised if we saw anything other than 75 basis points takes interest rates to about 3%. But while this is a massive move, biggest since Black Wednesday, keep in mind 3% on the bank rate is still really low by historical standards. It's just that we have had such low interest rates for so long. And in fact, in the European Union, they were negative for almost a decade. So it feels like a big rise, but historically, we're still at a pretty low level.
We keep going back to Black Wednesday when we came tumbling out of the
which
exchange
I
rate
actually
mechanism.
remember, and I shouldn't date myself
but
here.
those interest rates went up to something like 15%.
They did, but they came back down in a real hurry, and interest rates were only raised for one reason, and that was to lift the value of sterling, because at that point it was artificially pegged to the Deutschmark. That's not the case anymore. We have a floating exchange rate. We don't have to defend it. And do you remember how quickly interest rates came back down? That's the question right now, actually. We know this interest rate hike is coming. We know that there will probably be more interest rate hikes. But how far does the bank go? When do they know they've done enough? Because we know that there's a lag between raising interest rates and when they actually take effect. We know that there's the possibility of a recession coming. Higher interest rates don't help that. How far does the bank go? When do they stop?
Yeah, and I suppose homeowners and people with mortgages thinking, heaven forbid, we're into repossessions territory, or if we're talking about people, on fixed-rate mortgages, I think something 1.5 million on trackers, expecting it to go up to £900.
Absolutely, and we have so many people on variable rate or on fixed rate who will then have to refinance over the next couple of years. This is a really difficult situation for the Bank of England, and in fact, let me digress a bit. The Federal Reserve in the U.S., which is sort of first amongst equals when it comes to central bankers, they raised rates yesterday. The head of the Fed, a guy called Jerome Powell, did a press conference. He actually said, we have very little data on inflation when it's this high in the modern era. Now, I like a little bit of humility out of a public official as much as the next guy, but that scared me a little bit, saying that we don't quite understand how inflation is working right now is a little bit scary, and he's not the only one. I think he's just being a little bit more candid. So the question is, how long will rates stay where they are if we are, in fact, heading into a recession? We haven't seen that recession yet. It's not reflected in the numbers, but I can't find a forecaster who doesn't think that's what's going to happen. Hard to keep raising interest rates if you see a recession, if you see unemployment rising.
Yeah, but if they don't raise interest rates, inflation will keep rising. Isn't that the point?
That's the theory. But I'm starting to query that a little bit, particularly after hearing Jerome Powell say we don't have that much information. Over the summer, he said we now understand how much we don't understand about inflation, again, which is
a bit worrying that he doesn't understand about inflation.
In all honesty, I was so
the world's most powerful
surprised that people didn't pick up on this, and thank you for giving me an excuse to shout about it again. But look at some of the countries that started, and there are a lot of countries that started raising interest rates a year before we did. They're smaller countries, Hungary, New Zealand, the Czech Republic. They all have different economic circumstances, but they did recognize inflation. Maybe they have memories of high inflation more recently than we do, but they have been raising interest rates for 18 months. Inflation is still rising there. So I am starting to wonder whether the playbook that we are using may not be totally applicable to the sort of inflation.
There's no manual.
There's no manual.
Know what we're doing. We're driving blind.
Well, not quite blind.
Okay, good.
But there is a body of knowledge that we're constantly improving upon.
Okay, that's Laurie Laird, economist, talking about those interest rate rise. We'll know